That's a good way to start class. I don't have anything interesting to say.
כל הזמן.
What's the Kabbalah?
Okay, let's try and get some Kabbalistic wisdom here. So I've got 3 topics I want to try and cover tonight. I want to talk a little bit about the Parashah. I want to talk about Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which starts tomorrow night, Friday night. And if we can get to a little bit of Pesach, we'll do that, only because I won't be here again next week. And the following Thursday is the B'dikat Chametz. It's a complicated night. I can't be certain that we're going to be able to make class. Okay, so let's talk about Parashat Vayikra. It's the 3rd book of the Torah. Starts with the word Vayikra, and Vayikra has a small aleph. And I brought my tikkun if you want to see where we're at. You want to pass this around so you can see. This is the word Vayikra. And I'll wait for you to get your glasses out. And you'll see that the word is written normal, except for at the end of the word is the letter Aleph. Now, I'm not going to talk about the significance of the letter Aleph. The word itself has many, many fascinating. You see this? All the other words go down this far. That is a letter. That is the letter Aleph. And it's just hanging out there.
I thought that was an Aleph.
It is. That's a regular size aleph, and there's a small aleph at the end of the previous word.
So all these lessons.
But there's no final aleph.
No, there's no, but it's that's what I'm saying. It's a very unique situation where there is a letter that appears in the Torah that is smaller than it normally would be. Sometimes they're bigger than they would normally be. Sometimes there's 2 nuns that are upside down even. I don't remember how many places, 10, 12, 15 places in the whole Torah where we have letters that are not sized the way they would normally be. There's nothing special about this letter in terms of its form. It's just small. It's just small. That's what it is. Hello, welcome.
What it means.
It doesn't change what it means. It doesn't change the meaning of the word. It doesn't change how you pronounce it. Okay? It doesn't change how you read it. It doesn't change anything. The word Vayikra is an interesting word, but we're not going to talk about that tonight. We're going to go a little more Kabbalistic because the traditional meanings aren't as important.
So why is it like that?
Okay, I'm not going to give the traditional reason. I'm going to give the Kabbalistic reason. Okay, so this is a teaching that comes from a man named Rav Dov Ber Pinson. He's a chassid. He's a Chabad rabbi, considered a modern Kabbalist, and he talks about this letter Aleph as being the secret identified by the Baal Shem Tov and the Ari for healing. This is the secret of healing, this letter Aleph. So, many times we have prayers throughout our day, throughout that are organized throughout the day that are for healing. So we're thinking about somebody else. We're thinking about healing energy that we want to come to them. We think about, they're sick and we want them to get better. And the Ari and the Baal Shem Tov are saying that this Aleph is the secret to the meditations that they would use to help somebody heal. So how can it be that this little letter Aleph is how we get to healing?
This specific Aleph?
This specific Aleph, because it's small. That's what makes it unique. It's a small letter Aleph. So the idea of a small letter Aleph, this one, I think it's the only small letter Aleph that appears in the Torah. This specific letter Aleph is the secret for meditations on healing. Okay, I was really hoping I'd have a pen here. I'd be able to write some stuff down. You'll just have to trust me on some of these things. So there's a Hebrew word, that choleh. It's spelled chet vav lamed he. Okay, and when you take the numerical value, the gematria, it adds up to 49. Now, 49 is particularly significant at this time of the year, which we may or may not get to later. Worry about that. But 49 represents an aspect of being incomplete. Okay, 50 represents completion. 50 is either the highest gate going up towards purity or the lowest gate going down towards impurity. 49 represents you're almost there, but you're incomplete. You're missing something. There's a piece that's lacking. An illness from a holistic or spiritual sense, illness is lack. That's what it is. Our natural state of being, our natural connection with the Creator, with Hashem, is one of being healthy, happy. And when I say healthy, I mean healthy in every way. Healthy mentally, healthy physically, healthy spiritually, whole, complete. That is our natural, that is the way our natural relationship is supposed to be. Our relationship with others, our business, everything is supposed to be whole and complete. But illness represents a level below that. It represents lack of completeness, lack of complete health. And it can be, again, mental illness. It can be physical illness. It can be illness in our business or in our work dealings. You know, we're not moving forward in the next level in our job. There's an illness there. There's something incomplete that's not allowing you to move to that next level. So you are ill. So it also represents an opportunity for choice. So when you're at that level of incomplete, you know, you've got a couple different directions you can go. Do you want to go more towards a level of purity, or do you want to allow yourself to slip further into impurity? Okay? There's choice there. So those are the two things that 49 represents. 49 represents choice, and 49 represents being incomplete. And that is the gematria of the word choleh, the word sick in Hebrew. On the other hand, we have the word kol. Kol means all, everything. It represents completeness. And it has the numerical value of 50. 50. Now, the rabbi that I was listening to and a couple of the other things that I looked at did not mention that the numerical value of the letter Aleph, the gematria of Aleph, is 1. And that you would think it's just as simple as, okay, 49 sickness plus this little letter Aleph is 1, is 50 whole. They didn't say that. So I think that that's interesting. I'm not sure why they didn't say that. I'm not sure if it just simply isn't true. And this is one of the things that I've mentioned about gematria before. Gematria is not for us to make up. It's not for us to say, 49 plus 1 equals 50. There you go. Makes sense, right? Not necessarily. We rely on the sages even for gematria. Even though 1 plus 1 equals 2, in gematria that isn't always the way it works out. So we need to remember that. I'm assuming there's a reason why they didn't say that. I don't think I'm the first one who ever thought of it. So
why didn't you ask?
I wasn't live that I could have asked. Maybe I should try and find an email and see if I can ask.
But Choleh and Vayikar are
No. Choleh is 49. Yeah. The small aleph that we're talking about that represents that in this case represents healing. The Baal Shem Tov and the Ari say that this is the secret for healing. So the secret of completeness, the secret of taking the word choleh and making it complete, kol, bringing it to the 50th level, is the letter aleph. So to me it made sense. Well, if it's just, it's this letter aleph. It's this small letter aleph. So to me it made sense. Okay, great. 49 plus 1 equals 50. There you go. Now I understand why the aleph represents healing and why it represents completion.
Is it significant because Leviticus is basically where you start. I mean, Leviticus is really where they start handing out commandments. And so the aleph comes from the healing comes from the commandments.
I'm going to get to where the healing actually comes from. I'm just telling you what I was surprised to find. It's not where it comes from. That's all I can tell you. That's all I'm saying so far. Maybe I shouldn't have even mentioned it, but to me it struck me. Oh, here we are. That's the end of the lesson. But there was another several minutes left of the lesson, and it goes somewhere very interesting from here. So, which I will tell you about. Maybe it is significant. It just wasn't part of the context of this particular lesson. I'm not sure. Okay, so moving on from here.
But the small aleph is only in that specific location?
Yeah, here.
I mean,
Did you saw it? It came around? Okay.
But no other place.
I don't think there's...
numeric value for Vaikar.
So that I'm also... So that's I'm also not going to go into that. So if you just pick up any chumash, they'll talk about why is it Vayikar versus Vayikra. They talk about the idea of Vayikar refers to the more mundane conversations, and Vayikra are more the conversations that Moses has, I think it says either with the angels or with Hashem. But again, you can pick up any chumash and you'll get that interpretation. I want to move beyond that.
This is Vayikra. This is Vayikra.
This is Vayikra.
Okay.
But you would actually, the more appropriate word in this case is actually Vayikar. It's kind of strange that it uses the word Vayikra, just from a purely grammatical sense. But
Vayikra, he called, yeah.
so, I mean, that's just the way it is. Okay, but again, that's a significance you can pick up in any chumash, and that's always my goal, is to take us beyond that. So, and that's where the Ari and the Baal Shem Tov take us. So, what they explain is that the Aleph represents the idea of Ein. Ein means nothing or nothingness. You know, Ein li, I don't have, whatever it is. And if you go back to some of our lessons from the past several weeks, we talked a lot about the idea of yesh me'ein, something from nothing. Everything that we know of, going back, it was created from this original nothingness. And in this case, remember, we talked about the idea that the something that was created was desire. That's not going to come into play here. I'm just reminding you of what we talked about. Yesh me'ein, something from nothing. Okay, so this aleph is the first letter in the word ein, nothingness. Okay? And nothingness is the place where we want to actually live our lives. Okay, what do we mean by that? Well, they describe Moshe Rabbeinu as the most humble person that ever lived. Bitul, that's how they describe him, as having humility. And that humility came from being able to reduce himself. Maybe to say ein, to say nothingness is extreme, but that's the idea. The idea is that you reduce yourself, you make of yourself nothing in comparison to the light force of the Creator. That truly whatever you are, whatever existence you have in this world, is a result of the blessings and miracles that come from the Creator, and therefore you are nothing. On the other hand, you're everything, but that's not the context we're talking about here, because the context we're going through here is one of, why are you sick? Why is there lack? Why are you incomplete? And how does this aleph create completion? Okay, so if we start from the idea that we are in a place of being humble, of having humility, we can understand the aleph is reducing itself in the same way that Moshe Rabbeinu reduced himself. And this is what you'll read in a chumash. You'll basically read that Moshe didn't want to write Vayikra. He wanted to write Vayikar. Hashem made him write Vayikra, so he wrote the aleph small to make him to make himself appear humble in the way that he was called to Hashem. Okay? So to understand this idea more, Rav Dov Ber Pinson starts to talk about what he calls tzirufim, a tziruf. So tzirufim, I don't know if there's a great way to translate it, but it deals with the idea of creation.
Combination, maybe.
Right, but creating new combinations in a way that something new comes out of it. I think that's essential to the word tziruf, right? It's not as simple just assembling things. It's the idea that you're assembling things in a way that creates something that results in something that didn't exist before. And this relates to the way that the world was created. The world, it says, was created by the words of Hashem, by the Aleph Bet. So whenever we put together these letters from the Lashon HaKodesh, from the holy language of Hebrew, when we put different letters together, what we're doing is we're elevating that combination into something new that results in creation. So when I look at this thing in front of me, this shulchan, okay, what I'm saying from the standpoint of the Creator, from the aspect of the Aleph Bet, from the idea of the tzirufim, is I'm saying, when I use the word shulchan, I physically create this table. That's what's happening. So the elevated language of Hebrew, as spoken by Hashem and as utilized by us, is actually what makes this table. Okay? So the tzirufim, the tziruf that happens is the letters, the shin, the lamed, the chet, the nun, they grow into a combination that become elevated to a certain vibrational energy that results in a table in our physical world. And that's true of every letter and every word. And the way Rav Dover Pinson puts it, it's actually true of other languages too. But what he says is that the other languages of the world are interpretations of the Lashon HaKodesh, of the holy language of Hebrew. Okay, I'm not sure I understand that. I'm just saying what he shared. Okay, so
I've always looked at it in a different way because I try to reconcile the Big Bang to the story of creation. And you start with a Kabbalistic idea that creation, in the moment of creation, everything was created. And so when you go through the 7 days, it's not like God is creating new things. Everything was already created, and he's just moving things around. He's just rearranging things during those 7 days. But we know from science, or they apostolize with science, is that creation didn't start with matter. It started with an incredibly dense
energy. Yeah.
And we know that in humans, our thoughts are just electrical impulses. Mm-hmm. And so if you were to think about creating the universe in the same way that you think about creating a painting, imagine this universe isn't anything more but a four-dimensional painting created by a being who can paint a four-dimensional painting like we can paint a painting. And the first thing that you have to do is you have to get the inspiration. So whereas the Kabbalists really do talk about the words, I've always thought that in reality everything started with a thought. And then in order for us to understand the creative thought of a being like that, because we can never understand that thought, the next thing that was sort of created after time was created was the word. And so we don't, it's not the utterance of the shulchan, but because we are lower beings than God, our thoughts have to express words. And the creative spark of a Jew working towards doing something to fulfill a commandment, is the creative spark that elevates it. If I build this table and I use it for Shabbat or learning Torah, everything in it that was created, all of a sudden, the energy is locked into it, becomes elevated and comes to its true purpose. If I put this table in Fuddruckers and everyone just sits there and eats cheeseburgers and they're having fun, they're having nice family time, and it's wonderful, well, that table is just wood and matter. But if I put this in a Jewish home and I have a Shabbat meal on top of it, and I'm serving kosher food and I'm trying to observe commandments, and through this I'm trying to fulfill the direct commandment that God gives us, all of a sudden everything is elevated and the table becomes like an altar. Anything that we use in matter.
But the word table is the same word.
Well, but I think.
For Quadrager or for Jewish.
But I think that's along the lines of what he at least it's along the lines of what he's trying to say, because when I had the original word shulchan, when I was referring to this as shulchan, and we actually just got done reading this portion of the Torah where they were talking about the building of the Mishkan, and they actually used the word shulchan to talk about the tables that are prepared, that the 12 loaves are put on, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think that's the idea, that when you use the Lashon HaKodesh, when you're really talking about shulchan, that is the source of the word. Now, I can use the source of the word shulchan in a holy way and in a less holy way. When I start using it in other languages, I'm almost certainly talking about it in a less holy way. However, it still exists. There's no denying that. If I call this a table...
Of course there is.
What's that?
Of course there is.
Right, so if I...
Denying.
Well, denying physicality, there is an aspect of that which we've talked about already, right?
Well,
because
Hawking just died. Talk to Hawking.
Yeah, so when you
talk to you about whether or not the universe is really real, and if you take the fact that 75% of the matter and over half the energy in the universe is something that we only think exists and we don't know, we can't identify it.
Yeah.
Well, when you start thinking about what the missing piece is, how come the missing piece can't be metaphysical? Maybe reality isn't reality.
And I think that's at least in part what Rav Dov Ber Pinson is saying too. I mean, I think he's trying to say, like, there is a metaphysical component, and that component is the Aleph Bet. And as hard as it is for us to understand the idea that the shapes and numerical values and the spoken letters, and spoken, again, you want to say spoken by Hashem, which is a very complicated idea to think about, or spoken by people, but whatever it is, the shulchan is not, the table is not created by a handyman who takes a piece of wood and puts it through a table saw, and the welder who comes along and puts this, and the factory worker who screws it all together.
Thoughts eventually.
What's that?
Shulchan is in our thoughts.
That's right. It wouldn't exist if we didn't say it and think it. This table wouldn't
And
exist.
thoughts
That's really
are
what
not
we're saying.
physical, so.
But there's an energy to them, and I think that's really when he uses the word.
Everything is energy.
Right, but I think when he uses the word siruf,
Uh-huh.
I think that's part of what he's trying to get to. I think he's trying to get to the idea that you know that there is a created aspect of this that involves a creator, that involves an assemblage, it involves having something new
But
that
life
comes
in its
out of it.
essence is a tziruf.
That's right.
Correct?
Every second of every day is a tziruf, right?
Right.
For each one of
That's
us.
exactly what he said.
Right. So the fact that this table exists is just because I think it still exists now, and I still think it exists now, and I still think it exists now, and I still think it exists now. That's right. I'd say we're in agreement, but we're expressing the same
Gemara,
idea.
Sorry for going a little bit from totally away from that, but the Gemara did have also explanation for everything, including Yechezkel, including everything, or just certain things the Gemara is.
I mean, I have not completed my studies of the Gemara or even close, so I just can't comment on that.
The Gemara is a commentary on the commandments as commented on the Mishnah, and then they elaborated on the Mishnah, and many things were left out of the Mishnah because they were self-explanatory, so the Gemara is basically what certain people 1,000 years ago to 2,000 years ago thought was important. And then you have all these other people who've sit down and commented on it.
Because, there are certain things that, like Yechezkel and certain episodes that I don't know how they explained it. I never actually went to see. So.
Well, I mean, Yechezkel, is mentioned several times throughout the Gemara.
The chariots and all those things.
It's mentioned. I mean, I've come across those things. I couldn't necessarily tell you where, because again, it hasn't been part of my rigid studies yet. That's one of my goals for the future. I read it and I reference it when I need to, but up
that
until
they
now.
took Yeshayahu Nun Gimel. Do you know Yeshayahu Nun Gimel, the famous chapter that they actually had a big dispute about?
I haven't
That
gotten
they took it out from the Mishnah,
Yeah.
the Gemara.
No, I don't know. I have haven't gotten to this. Okay, let's finish up this topic. Yeah.
Just a quick question. The Hebrew language, where does it come from? Was it created by God or?
Right. So the most interesting place to read about this, in my opinion, is in the Zohar. So the prologue to the Zohar actually goes through each of the Hebrew letters. It actually starts from the end and goes back to the beginning. It starts from the letter Tav and goes backwards to the letter Aleph. Now, why does it go through this? Well, actually, the way it goes through this is it describes it as each of the letters come before Hashem and make their case for why they should be the ones that are used to create the world. That's how it explains it, and it's beautiful. And it's really interesting, and it's not so difficult to read. I mean, you might question parts of it, but it's not so high up in the sky. And they go from Tav all the way, they get to Bet, and they get to the letter Bet, and the Bet is ultimately the letter that is used to create the world, and starts the Torah with the letter Bereshit. We have a huge letter Bet. Actually, maybe that's another place. I just happen to think that's another place where we have a huge letter, if you wanted to see. So that's the letter Bet. It's the very first letter of the Torah. Yeah. And the very last letter of the Torah, the Bet that ends the word, the Lamed that ends the word Yisrael at the very end, is also large.
Story of the second son.
So, anyway, getting through this, so he gives another example, for example, the word tzara, which refers to a hardship or a difficulty, through meditation, if you want to put it this way, can be transformed into ritzah. And ritzah refers to I don't know if I want to say pleasantness, but an acceptability, I can't think of a better word right now. But it's a transformation. It's almost an opposite. From hardship to something that isn't hard, that's tolerable, that's acceptable. And that's only through changing one letter's, the position of two letters. That's all it is. So those things, and there's just example after example after example like this, whether it involves gematria or whether it involves rearrangement of the letters. And what it refers to is the idea that when you put things together in a tziruf, in a particular arrangement, a particular creation, it changes the vibrational energy. Okay, so when we want to change the vibrational energy for somebody who needs healing, okay, the way that we can, that it's described, the way that we can change the vibrational energy is we pray for them, right? That's what we hear. And that's what the Ari and that's what the Baal Shem Tov are talking about. They're saying, you pray for another person, right? But what was in their mind, what was going through their meditation when they were thinking of this letter Aleph, this small letter Aleph, is the way that they're going to go about meditation and praying for another person. Okay, so along with that, we learn this idea of if you want something for yourself, pray for it to be received by another person. And we always think of this in a very, very simple way. We think, if I pray for somebody else's healing, it means I'm being selfless, it means I'm being considerate, I'm being merciful in the way that I want to be like Hashem, the way I think of Hashem. I think of Hashem as being merciful, so I also want to be merciful. And that's the traditional way that we think of, I pray for somebody else, and Hashem will also give me the same blessing, or give me the same healing, or whatever it is.
Really?
But actually, yeah, that's we say it's like the way that
מתפלל על חברו, נהנה קודם, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it does create something a little bit of hypocrisy, because if I were to pray on someone from my bottom of my heart, and now that recently I came to know that it is said like that, now I feel bad praying for someone else, because in my knowledge I know that it's like asking it for
because this is
myself,
going to
so
fix
it's
that.
hypocrisy.
Right now, what I'm going to tell you right now is going to fix that hypocrisy. You ready?
Okay.
Because this is it. This is
I'm
where
ready.
the Aleph comes from.
You have to
Okay?
be the Aleph.
Here we are. If you are the Aleph and you can remove yourself from the situation, then what you can do is you can see that when you're suffering, I'm suffering. We are one. We are together, right? There is no difference between your suffering and my suffering. We are all together because when I remove myself as an individual from the situation, when I create humility, when I create when I reduce myself in the eyes of Hashem and see that no matter who it is, no matter what it is, no matter what they're going
We are
through,
one as humans or as Jews?
as he didn't specify either one. He didn't specify either one, but I'm going to go to humanity just because that has been part of my
What about
teachings.
creation?
Because that's what I've taught earlier in this class, right? We've talked about this idea that there is an aspect.
He would go with humanity because in the States you have to go with humanity. You can't go with one group.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is when you're talking about the suffering of another person, okay, all people are creations of Hashem, all of them. And if you're going to reduce yourself, you need to reduce yourself for everybody. You know, our role as Jew, as we've talked about, is not one of superiority. It is not one of superiority. We need to be prepared. I mean, that's why Moshe can be described as the most humble person on earth. How can you be humble if you're superior? They don't work together. Not superior, we have a unique role in the world. And part of our role in the world is understanding our ability to reduce ourselves and to create healing for the entire world. That is our ability for the entire world.
On Shabbat, when the rabbi is asking, for the healing prayer, when you make that line and you give it the name,
Yeah.
he only accepts Jews.
No.
there. No, he does.
No. You can. No. Anybody.
Huh?
No. Anybody. He'll.
Anybody.
No. He'll read a name for anybody. He'll read anybody's
You
name.
have to give a Jewish name.
No.
Jewish member.
No.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Ask the rabbi.
No. I can go up and say. I can go up and say,
Yeah,
no,
really.
Can-
no, he doesn't. No, it's not
The
true.
blessing, the bless, the
Well, you have
prayer,
to give his name in a Jewish
the
name.
praise for the Jewish people, for the
Yeah.
healing, for the healing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if your
Jewish name.
cousin John, son of Mary,
That's what I'm saying.
if your cousin John, son of Mary, is sick, and you go up to the rabbi and you say John ben Mary, he'll absolutely say the name. He'll absolutely say the name.
So you
No
do-
problem.
You said the name even
But
if
you
it's not
still,
Jewish?
you
Yeah.
still
Sure.
saying he has to be a Jew. He just has to have he can have an English name, but he still needs to be a Jew.
Well,
No.
if you give his name
No.
Jewishly, like, what's your father's name?
But the name is irrelevant.
What's your
We're
name?
talking about the being
So
Jews
your
or
name
not
would be
Jews.
Sharon.
No,
Bach
it doesn't.
Charles. That's your name.
I'm not aware of any restriction he's ever put on
That's all you
that.
got to do is go say.
I thought the
I
prayer
want
was
blessing for
the
Sharon
prayer,
Bach-Charles.
that prayer that
That's
he
it.
does is for the Jews
But
that
if
are
you
sick
want
at
to, if
the
you want to
time.
give your
It's not that way.
Here,
English name, that doesn't.
let me grab
You know what I'm
a
saying?
sidor.
Just reformat yourself.
Don't you have to give the mother's name?
It's for healing. It's the mother's name.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But okay. Anyway, it's not that important one way or the other. But here,
Are we one with the creation or only with humans?
Sure, why not?
With the creation.
What humans are the creation?
There's always one guy like you.
okay.
Because we have
So here you go.
Yeah.
Here's the prayer. Misha berach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov Moshe Aaron David Moshe Ushlomo. And then he goes on. May he bless and heal this sick person. HaCholeh, just what we just talked about. The person's name, Ben the mother's name, Bavur She Yitin Tzedakah, and there's no mention of Jew. There's no mention
Well,
of
it doesn't
that it
matter
has to be a
because
son
the Bible
of.
is for Jews.
No, I mean this is the
Jewish
prayer.
people.
I never heard the idea that we would restrict our prayers only on behalf of Jews.
Jewish.
Okay,
So
so
when we're giving the Torah, we give it to the Jewish. I mean, if you're going by the Torah, we're going by for the Jewish. But tonight, today, our DNA is going to be humanity.
okay.
It's got to be humanity, because you can't seclude one group.
Well, again, it's two different things. So
how is the Aleph make you?
the meditating on the Aleph is the idea of reducing yourselves and creating humility, so that you can recognize your oneness with everybody around you. You can see yourself as Ein, and to create Yesh, and to be able to see that Aleph has the ability to transform, and can make healing, can make completeness out of your humility and your ability to complete your prayers along with somebody else, not seeing them as separate from you. So not seeing that somebody else is sick, but seeing that your sickness is part of me because of my humility, because I'm able to reduce myself
But
to
there's
that level.
nothing wrong also to pray for yourself as well, right?
No, there's nothing wrong with it, but they say that the way to have your prayers answered is to pray for somebody else to receive it.
And to say what he was saying, I don't think there's hypocrisy there, because if you do something for somebody, right, because you think you're doing a good thing, I think this is my way of thinking. I think you see yourself as a God. I'm provided for you something, so you feel good about it. It's like the person who give money to a homeless. Like they feel good when they do that. It's a sense
No,
of
I
being.
just feel empathy.
That's a sense of
but-
feeling like God.
But it's easier to feel empathy than it is to think, okay, I'm going to give this guy $1 because I know when I walk down the street I'm going to get $2.
Exactly.
It's like, what do you mean? That's selfish. That's how you begin to feel, right? It messes with your mind, right? However, I will tell you this, okay? Rav Berg, he used to say to people, somebody would come and thank him for something, or they, ask him for a blessing or something like that, and he would say, you don't get it. People don't get it. I'm the most selfish one in the room.
Yeah.
The reason why I do everything I do is because I want it all.
You said that one of the first classes we had, you said that in order to receive, you have to have a space for it to go. And so in order for it to have a space, you have to give.
That's right.
So I don't see the difference. If I'm
Exactly.
praying for someone else, and I'm making a space in myself to receive.
That's right.
So
I don't see
the issue.
Yeah.
I don't have empathy for nobody. The only reason if I give money of something to a homeless is because it's a mitzvah, it's getting me closer to Hashem. I don't really care about that person. If it's not because of Hashem, I will never give anything to nobody.
That's exactly what I think about mitzvot. When you start to make mitzvot because you're obliged to, you
Right.
don't do it from the empathy as he at least
Empathy
admits.
is a bad thing.
But that's
I think
not-
it makes you feel
But-
bad.
That's for
but
that
wait a minute,
person to
wait a minute,
decide.
wait a minute,
I
wait a
don't
minute,
get that.
stop.
I don't think so either.
So here's the thing.
Why?
This is my take on that. So if you were to look at, say, Western religions, like, say, take Christianity. Christianity starts with the belief, and the belief is supposed to lead you into action. And so basically your action is inspired by a belief, and your actions can change in their meanings, and really the point that you get once you start from, I believe God comes into existence when I believe he exists, you can do anything. The reason why the mitzvot are the mitzvot, take kashrut, okay? Imagine you have a father like we all want. He's a hardworking guy, he's compassionate, he's strong, he's the man that you just admire, okay? Imagine that father, right? And there's a daughter who's left home and she's gotten married, and for the first time her father's coming to visit. Now the one thing about the father that's different is that he's allergic to peanuts. If he eats a peanut, he'll die. So she's in the supermarket and she's looking for food. And except her father is coming. And so when you and I might look at, in the normal world, might look at food, what's cheap, what's tasty, what's happy, she has to add this thing where she has to check everything. She look at every label. Does she have peanuts? Does she have peanuts? Does she have peanuts? Right? So after doing this, she's immersed in caring for her father. And she goes up to the cashier line, and she's doing her last check, and so she's still in that father mindset. She notices the woman in front of her doesn't have enough money, and the sales clerk is giving the woman all kinds of problems. And since she's so focused on what her father is, from this action, she remembers what her father would do. So she drops a $20 bill on the ground and says, ma'am, I think you dropped this 20 out of your purse. And so keeping the kashrut is a way to elevate something that's normal, to change your focus on it. Because if you're an observant Jew, if you're actually, especially living here in Chutz Haaretz, where you can't just go to a grocery store and count on everything being kosher, when I go to the grocery store and I'm looking to see how I can be as kosher as possible, I'm reading all the ingredients. I'm thinking about God, and I'm elevating the mundane things that I do. And if I do it enough, eventually everything that I do becomes meditation. And so if my belief and my faith in God doesn't come from I decide he exists, but from a pattern of action that actually leads me into that belief, which drives the action and gives the action meaning, it becomes a cycle. So, yeah, we start out doing
Leads you
commandments.
or touches you?
What's that?
Leads you or touches you?
Who cares? As long as
Well,
it's
no.
I care.
First of all, I think it's a very good example.
If you're doing
It-
the right thing.
You may
You have to
may
do the right thing for
observe.
the right reason.
No, you don't. You
Yeah,
just
you
have
do.
to do the right thing
But
and give
you
it
know
time.
to begin,
Eventually.
You said the Western, they said believing and then action.
Thank you.
We do action and believing.
Thank you.
Hold on.
He didn't say you have to have
Okay,
a-
let's
I mean, that's not what he said.
let's clarify this. Let's clarify these points.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay,
We do and then we
Then
listen.
we-
that's right.
Isn't that what the book says?
How we-
No, hold on.
That's exactly what the book
But
says.
yeah, just have to, when you're saying that with an Israeli accent, it's like, yeah, we said we're going to do it, then we figured out what we're going to do.
No,
And
that's
then we
not
struggle
what,
with it.
that is
'Cause-
no, that is not what she said.
It is.
That is not what she
No,
said.
don't believe
Okay.
and then
She
we're gonna
said
be
you
action.
Okay.
do it because
Okay.
it's in the book
Exactly.
to do.
Okay,
But
And
that's why we
then
got
Here we-
the Torah.
eventually, you do that
But that's
long
why we
enough,
got the
it will
Torah.
get in there.
that's exactly what he's saying
But-
too. But you don't necessarily. It's not necessarily so simple to start from the idea of believing. Meaning to have action and belief in mind at the same time. That is the ideal situation. However, we come from the idea of action first. I agree. That's right. So the idea of I'm giving the dollar and I'm becoming closer to Hashem is a little bit misguided, because the idea is I'm giving the dollar, and each time I do it, because I'm commanded to do it, I have to do it. I'm commanded to do it. It means I'm coming close to somebody. It means I'm coming close to somebody I might not otherwise come close to. It means I'm studying the boxes of food that I might not otherwise study. It means I'm I'm aware of everything that's going on around me on Shabbat because I don't want to violate Shabbat, not from the standpoint of detaching me, not from the standpoint of blindly following what they told me to do, but from the standpoint that it will refine my soul in a way that when I see the people around me, I will be refined in their eyes and they will be refined in my eyes. So when I begin to see the people around me as being special and unique, the way that I see Shabbat as being special and unique, when I treat other people the way I treat the Sabbath, which is not only possible, but it's what the entire Torah was designed for. This is what Rabbi Akiva meant when he said, "V'ahavta l'recha kamocha." This is what he's talking about, right? That is the primary principle. Love your neighbor as yourself. So if you learn to understand, now what you see in the world is a completely different thing, and that's why I tell people, come to classes like this, and I'm not just saying this class, I'm saying the classes like this. Come and learn from people like Rabbi Wein, Rabbi Orlowick. Come and hear the Torah on Shabbat. Hear the inspirational messages that come out of the most mundane things. Do you understand how boring the last two parshot were? And even this one. It sounds like you're listening to a broken record. They took the bull and they threw the blood and they cut the thing and they slashed the thing and then they took it out. And then there was this other way they did it when they took the bull and they took it to the right side instead of to the left side. And then and then there was the other thing we forgot to tell you about when they took the sheep and did exactly the same thing. But we're going to tell you the whole story all over again, even though we just said we did it with the bull. So instead of saying, see paragraph 24:3 for the rest of this whole thing, we spell the whole darn thing out again. That's this whole parsha. That's the whole parsha.
But to me, there's a piece that you...
What I'm saying is there's incredible inspiration and refinement available through these ideas. Otherwise, the Torah wouldn't exist in the way that it does. You wouldn't see the letters that you see and the arrangement you see them. There wouldn't be the Zerufim created through the Torah. I mean, every letter and every word is in a very strict and careful order. Every space, every lack of words is in a very careful and very precise order. And it's okay that you don't see it in the world. It's okay. That's not the way I would like it. Obviously, I would like for people to see religious Jews as being the bearers of the struggles and the elevation and redemption of the world. I would love that everybody saw that all the time. But people are flawed. People are flawed. Teachings are flawed. Rabbis are flawed. That's the case. That's not our job. Our job is to understand what was the root. Where is this coming from? And this is where it's coming from. Everything we're talking about here and everything I hope to get to in the next 5-10 minutes or so, in speaking about Rosh Chodesh Nisan, I hope will take us to a higher place. Well, it'll help us see the redemption. And actually, it's a good transition to Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, again, it starts tomorrow night. So right now it's actually Erev. It's the eve of Rosh Chodesh. And it is the first month of the year. Not Rosh Hashanah. It's not. When we talk about Rosh Hashanah in the month of Tishrei, we're actually talking about the first of the month of the 7th month of the year. Okay? But tomorrow night actually starts the first day of the first month of the year, the month of Nisan. And the root that the sages identify for the word Nisan is the word Nes, Nun and Samech. So Nes refers to miracles. And one of the other things they point out is that the first letter, the letter Nun, again, when we talk about words, obviously letters can start many, many different words, but the word that the sages identify with the letter Nun is Nafal, and Nafal refers to falling, and in fact, the reason why in the Ashrei prayer we've got Aleph through Tav, Ashrei Ashrei Vetecha, and we skip the letter Nun, is because we're trying to always elevate to a higher and higher place. So we go through the whole thing. You know the prayer, the Ashrei. So we have Ashrei Ashrei V'Techa Yichasel Ashrei, and then we say Aromim Chal Elokai HaMelech, right? And we keep on going. We bet Gimel Dalet, and then we skip the Nun. And we skip the Nun because we don't want to be on a level of falling. So how is it that falling can be related to the idea of miracles. Well, along comes the Samech. And the Samech, being the second letter, actually is the one that connects us to the idea of miracles. So the Samech helps to elevate the Nun, so the two together. The Samech comes right after the Nun in the order of the Aleph Bet. So the Nun and the Samech help elevate to the level of miracles. And then comes along the final Nun. So in the word Nisan, there is a Nun Sofit, there's a final Nun that drops below the line. And it's written that the final Nun represents the idea of continuous miracles. So when we think of the idea of miracles, the immediate thing that comes to mind is Yetziat Mitzrayim, the redemption from Israel, the exodus from Egypt. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But the Nun represents why it is that we refresh this idea every single Pesach, why every year when the 15th of Nisan comes around, we read the Haggadah, because the 15th of Nisan, and actually the entire month of Nisan, represent the idea of continuous miracles. The month of Nisan is a continuous opportunity every year that it comes along to bring miracles into our lives. So Nisan creates the opening. This first day is the opening of the month of miracles. And the sages also bring down through the Sefer Yetzirah, the book written by Avraham Avinu, that the first day of the month of Nisan represents the first month, which is the month of Nisan itself. The second day of Nisan represents the second month of the year, which is Iyar. And it goes all the way through the 12 months. So the first 12 days of the month.
Is Tishrei the first one?
No.
Did I miss?
Tishrei is the 7th.
Is it?
Yeah, and if you read in the Torah.
There's a lot of first months.
Well,
Because
There's a lot of
Rosh Hashanah
first
is
months.
when-
That's exactly what he said.
because Rosh Hashanah represents the birth of, let's call it, humanity. Okay?
Yeah, that's new for me.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not the first month. And if you read in the Torah, you'll see, it says that, for example, it describes Yom Kippur. On the 10th day of the 7th month,
So
you will
Rosh Hashanah
fast.
is basically not really Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, it's an interesting,
Rosh Hashanah commemorates the day that humanity was created.
Right.
So it's basically our birthday.
That's right.
Humanity's birthday.
right.
And Nisan is the birthday of what?
Birthday of the Jewish people. In reality, we became the Jewish people through Pesach. So it's the story of, there's a question that people ask, why didn't you just start? Why didn't you just start the Torah with? Why didn't you just start the Torah with Abraham? Or why didn't you just start the Torah with the story of Moses? Why did you have to start the story with the creation of the world? But when you start talking about Jewish peoplehood, Pesach is where we actually started being a people. So when we separated ourselves from the Egyptians, and
No,
we
the
went
Egyptians separated us from anyone else and enslaved us. No,
yes
it
and
happened
no.
before.
No, yes and no. But we moved basically we moved out of Egypt, and we went through 40 years of basic training, where God came down and said, this is a completely different way that I want you to think, other than the world had. And we had to stay in the desert for 40 years because we were being taught a religion of life, not a religion of death. We were actually being taught a religion that talked about, our laws talk about how you live your life every day. And if you read the Torah, it doesn't talk about what happens after you die. It really doesn't. Whereas all the other religions in the world at that time, the big book in Egypt was the book of death. And they were very concerned about what happened to them after they died. And what was going on between the day you were born and the way you died was controlled by men. The Pharaoh was basically your god between birth and death, and then the gods took back over when you died. But with Judaism, every commandment talks about what you do today.
Isn't that true that there's nothing after death in the Torah? Rabbi?
It says that
About after death?
Well, there is
That's what he said.
there's two men that ascended without dying, but it doesn't clearly, like in Christianity, they have this whole thing about you'll go to heaven and whatever, and it's in their book.
Because
Yeah,
what
well-
he's saying is what the Reformed Jews believe. That's exactly what they believe.
No, there is an afterlife, but it's not. It's not something we're supposed to be worried
Well,
about.
and in fact, we talked about some of that over the last few weeks. We talked about the idea,
So
not so much about the afterlife. What we were really talking about is the Tchiat Mitim. We were talking about the final redemption. which is the next redemption, by the way. You know, we are in the last exile, and we're coming to the last. There was something very beautiful that I heard
I mean, we're working our work here to get to the next level.
We're working our work here in order to obey the commandments that God gave us. And if our life ended at a base level, in my mind, at a base level, if you're actually in tune, you do the commandments out of love of God. And the reward for, God says the only reward he promises the Jewish people is we will be content in our portion. He doesn't say that our portion will be big, it doesn't say our portion will be small. But we do what the commandments tell us out of a love for God, and the reward for a good life is a good life. And I'm not saying that there's not an afterlife, but I'm saying that in the text of the Torah, it does not say, well, if you do...
the next life. You don't know exactly which
I
life.
thought we have to do
What you're
our
saying
work
is it's
over
not
here
the
and
point.
to be
It's
rewarded
not the
at
point.
this level.
The point is this life.
In my mind,
Right.
the only way that I know that there has to be something beyond this existence is that two men ascended without dying. They went to somewhere else. And so there is something else. But I don't really think it's our business to worry about that because, I mean...
No, when people lomdim et Gemara, they study and they worship God every day to do good mitzvot and to reach to a certain point, and the whole point is this life. You're kind of taking everything out of context for what they study and do, because they prepare for redemption and maybe the afterlife.
Again, be careful about your assumptions about people who study Gemara and Tanakh and things like this all day.
Correct me, please.
No, I'm just saying.
I'm sure there are people that are doing that.
But I'm sure that there are many, many people. In fact, as I've shared before, I believe most people these days are not. They are doing it in a manner that helps them draw meaning and understanding and refinement and closeness to their fellow human. Because as we talked about this, the idea that the mitzvot of Adam l'chavero are actually more elevated and more important than Adam l'shamayim. Right? They're more important. So if you have an opportunity, I can only do one or the other. It's Adam l'chavero. Why? Because your relationship with Hashem will be developed through your relationship with fellow human beings. That's where it will come from.
But you should, I don't know, man. This is...
It's not something you agree with. You have a different idea.
Well, I disagree with you.
You're entitled to.
Yeah,
You're entitled to. That's fine. That's free.
If everyone agreed, we wouldn't
Right.
choose.
but I don't like
That's exactly fine.
All right, let me just finish Nissan, and then I'll share one other thing with you, and I think we'll call it an evening. Okay, so again, referring to Nissan and referring it to being the opening to miracles, we still want to come back to this idea of the Nun representing Nafal, representing the falling. Okay, so there, even though Nes and even better Nisim, that miracles and continuous miracles are where we want to be, are what we want to be connected with, are why we want to read the story of Pesach through the Haggadah. It's not realistic for most of us. Most of us are not on a continuous trajectory that looks like this. Most of us are on a trajectory that looks a little more like this. You know, it's kind of the 2 steps forward, 1 step back mentality. Okay? But the idea is that the nafal, those little falls, are the things that help us take 2 steps forward the next time. They're what helps us to draw the idea that this is temporary. This is still an opportunity to finish the thought with the samech and create a miracle. And at some point, hopefully I will reach the point where it's the Nisan, it's the whole thing. I am creating continuous miracles. But this is not practical, again, for most of us and most of our lives. This is tzaddikim level. Most of us, we're in that 2 step forward, 1 step back. Or maybe I should say 1 step back, 2 step forward. It's normally in that order. Okay, I want to just finish with one thing, which I think is kind of related to some of the things that we were talking about in this last little portion here. I heard something very beautiful. There was a gangster rapper from Seattle. I didn't recognize his name, but a couple of the songs they played sound kind of familiar. He converted to being an Orthodox Jew. And he explained a little bit about the process that he went through. It took him 2 years, 2.5 years. He's a black hatter now, you know. Big black guy, wearing a black hat, and, you know, and Tzitzis hanging out and everything like that. And he shared some beautiful things along the way. It was a short video, but one of the things I thought was really amazing what he shared, and one of the things that drew him to Judaism, is he said Judaism was the first religion that he found that wasn't teaching that everybody who's not Jewish is going to hell. Okay? They weren't running out to try and seek converts or save anybody, because you don't need saving. Jews don't see that the rest of the world somehow needs to be converted, needs to learn all of our beliefs, needs to understand everything that we do and how we do it in order to be saved, in order to avoid Genom, in order to avoid eternal damnation. We don't have that belief. We don't have that belief. And that's why we make it hard for people to convert. You want to be in, you got to be all in. You got to understand what you're committing to, because now you are putting things at risk. You decide you want to take this level of responsibility. I'm expounding what he's saying.
In its time, didn't have competition like later on it became to be with Christianity.
That's definitely not true. From a religious.
There's a God that is not physical.
Yeah.
So
the Egyptians most certainly had that idea.
Who?
The Egyptians. The Egyptians certainly had that idea. They had both physical and non-physical gods. They absolutely did. Only Paro saw himself as actual physical manifest. No, I'm just saying. You look at the history of the nation of Amalek. You look at any of these nations. They all had, in one way or another, a combination. And even for most of them, what they describe as idols. We always think of as idols, the statues.
But nobody has a God like us. Nobody has a God whose name is who is unknowable and ineffable. Because as soon as you can name a God, you can control a God. God for other religions doesn't come from God. It comes from the idea that I don't understand it, so if I give it a name, I can control it. I can control it by bargaining with it.
I don't know if that's true or not, but
that's why they have Mary. That's why they have the other
Because
one
that gives them
to hold on to something because.
But even their God becomes manifest, and it's because you got to have something to hold on to.
Okay, but
This God is unknowable and unchangeable, and so he's the same he was 4,000 years ago.
I don't know about all that, but what I can say is that there have been not just religions but cultures, because I think that's the more traditional way to look at it, is cultures rather than religions. The Egyptians they had a culture; it wasn't a religion, and their culture was one that observed a non-physical entity, physical and non-physical entities, right? Both. I'm saying they both did,
They had sun,
but.
moon, and they had...
Yeah, that's all.
But there was a god of the sun. The sun, it wasn't like they worshipped the sun. There was the god of the sun.
Judaism is the only religion, even including Buddha, that we have an invisible God. You go to Buddha, they have a big fat guy.
That's not how they will see it. That's
they
not
have an image, some image. Like
that's
Jesus Christ is a man, is an
that
image of a man.
understood. But they see him as part of the Holy Trinity.
That's
From
right.
their
Exactly.
viewpoint, they have an image of a non-physical, non-face. Yes, they absolutely do. They have that idea.
Like a man.
It's like Muhammad,
But Jesus is one of three. He represents the Holy Trinity:
Islam is closer to
the
us.
Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit.
But actually, Buddhism is closer to us than Christianity is.
I'm telling
I feel
you.
like you have an image in your mind where it exists.
Well, but that's true in Judaism too. And you will see, you actually do see, believe it or not, as disgusting as it is, you will find Jewish art where they have drawn an image of Hashem. Somehow the idea escaped them. They didn't go to that school. I don't know where they went. But I'm just saying, you will find stuff like that because people are fallible. People make mistakes. People do things that make sense to them that just aren't sensical. And you'll find in Jewish religious sects where it seems to us externally that they're worshiping their leader almost like he's God. Like without him, there's nothing. You will find things like this. But it's because people are flawed.
Human beings need something to hang on to.
That's right. And that includes Jews.
I can't conceive of the concept of God, but I can.
Of course,
But
it's
I
very-
can't.
No, when I say Jews, I mean all Jews. I mean
can
secular
conceive
Jews,
of
religious
Menachem
Jews, anyone in
I can hang on
between.
to Menachem
It's-
Shmusim, but
it's-
I can't hang on to God.
It's very
See,
easy
that's
to make
one of the
mistakes
things
like
that
this.
Sometimes I feel kind of like thrown off when I see religious people in houses that they have those, picture of the bodies and everything, and they're all like, You know, I
I-
understand that, but for me, it's you know, the grade, yeah.
And this is where I will come back to the same thing that I. But this is where I will come back to say the same thing that I've said many, many times. Be careful of your observations of other
Right.
people, because you can't know. And my experience with most people who have a picture of a rabbi like the Rebbe, or like Rebbe Ovadia, Ovadia Yosef, or any of these people, or pictures of the Baal Shem Tov, or artist rendering of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Many of them, first of all, are about tshuva, so it means that this was their entryway into the connection that they have with Hashem right now, and so that they've got a great honor and respect for that person, or maybe they actually knew the person and they know that like they are their channel to Hashem. Now, again, it can become easily misguided, but the idea of seeing another human being as your channel to Hashem is a beautiful, honorful, it really, if you can understand how that person brought you there, but that's all they are, that they are that channel for you.
Yeah, rabbi, that's what they are.
That's what a rabbi
I
is.
think when they kissing the hand of the rabbi, it's like they worshiping him.
Again, you need to be careful about your observations of other people. If that's not for you, that's not for you. That's fine. It's fine to be aware of that. But there's no reason for you to look at or judge another person based on what you're seeing them doing. Okay?
There are two people in Neibach.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
true.
Yeah, Shari.
That's exactly, that's
Tell it
Is,
to them.
is it true that the Jews are supposed to be the
that's why I'm a little bit.
Light to
the-
the nations.
what?
Light to the nations?
Light to the nation.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I've heard people say.
Or the chosen people? Sure.
Okay.
Am
And
Segula? Absolutely.
I know all the jargon.
Yeah.
I've heard all the words. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of y'all in here. You can't get on the same page about nothing. How is it that you're gonna be anybody's light? I do not understand that, and I don't mean that. I don't mean
It means
that.
awareness.
Any sort of a.
It means awareness.
Everybody can say that. You get 6
Welcome to
Christians in the
world.
room, you're going to have that same bickering and arguing about, no, it means this, it means that. Well, you shouldn't be
And
doing
that's
So that's
So
humane.
So what makes y'all so special?
And that's why I'm going to go back to, and we're going to finish it up here. That's why I'm going to go back to the idea that you must have a teacher, a rabbi. You must. I'm not saying you have to worship that person or kiss their hand or put their face on your wall. I'm saying you must have a rabbi. I am not a rabbi. I am not qualified to be your teacher.
No, I'm not.
No, I know you're not, but I'm just making it clear. Like, each person must individually have that guide who can answer their questions, who is their authority, and who helps them
I
understand
get
these
that.
things.
But if
Because
you
you
get-
can all sit
One,
here.
2, 3, 4, 5
You're
different
walking-
teachers.
You're walking out.
And
Let
1,
me-
2,
let me
3,
answer
4,
your
5
question.
people are
Let me
repeating
ask
what
you a
these
question.
teachers say.
Let me answer your
But
question.
none of us on the
But
same page.
they're not. They're not. You're each presenting your own philosophy.
Yeah, that's what God
But
wants.
how
And
do you
that's-
know that?
that's
How do
what
you know
God
their
wants
teachers
us.
aren't exactly on the same page they are?
But let me ask you a question. The 5 of us that are Jews,
Uh-huh.
we descend from 70 people who walked into Egypt about 3,000 years ago,
Okay.
and we were just this way 3,000 years ago.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Now,
Not at
when we
all.
walked into Egypt, the world was Egyptians, and then later on it was Babylonians and Persians and Romans, and the world has been full of other peoples
Mm-hmm.
that have controlled the world and whatever the world.
I got it.
So how did the 70 people, and we've never made up more than 0.2% of the population of the planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could look at us here, and I always say if you go to a J-Date, a J-Date mixer, it's like going into a There Before the Grace of God, Bill I crowd. I mean, it's just, we're obnoxious, we're the best and the worst of all people. And the
Okay.
question becomes, if we're just the best and worst of all people, after 4,000 years, why are we still here while everyone's gone?
And I've
Eventually-
heard people say that.
Eventually, you have to ask yourself, if it's not us, what is it? And at the point when people say, how the hell are these people still around? That's it. That's all we do. And people say there is a God, and there has to be a God, because there's absolutely no reason why we didn't get all killed off, because half the time we deserve it.
But you're not even talking about what I'm asking.
What are you
Yeah,
asking?
And every time I have tried
Right.
to ask this question, they
Right.
go there.
But,
Right.
no, no,
Well, wait-
but let me give you a different answer. Let me give you a different answer.
Ask the question now.
That's the question.
That's why, well, למה אנחנו אור לגויים? Why
And you give him
אנחנו
Okay, I don't know
like
what that
the-
is.
No,
Why
let me,
we are light for the other people?
Yeah.
No,
no, I,
What makes us
Wait,
so
wait,
special?
wait.
Wait, let her
Wait,
answer let her ask the question.
Go ahead, hon.
I have no problem with Judaism. That's why I come here.
Right.
All right. When I came into this shul, I was not looking to become a Jew. I wasn't even looking to study Judaism. I learned you don't have to, which is why I would disagree with whoever was in here that said that you have your objective for having followed God means that you do it strictly from the position of I'm going to do the right thing. No, you don't. I came in here, let me just see what these people do. And I listened, and I went to class. And when I prayed in that Siddur, the transliterated version of it, I'm sitting in that room, and I'm reading, because everybody's all, you guys don't pray together, so everybody's wherever they are, which is fine. So I'm looking at my transliterated version, and I could literally feel something just from reading and making the sounds of Hebrew. I didn't understand Hebrew's alphabet like I do now. I've learned a little bit. At that point, I'm reading the transliteration, which is only giving me the sound. I don't have any awareness on my own of what I'm saying. But even without that, I had a feeling that you don't get everywhere. That was the reason. That was for me. That was my own selfish reason.
That's probably one of the most exciting things I've heard in our
Well,
classes.
and it was exciting for me because I've studied many religions. I was a Buddhist for 8 years. I know Buddhism. So if I'm in here, I'm not doing it because the rabbi said God wants you to do this, that, and the other. I mean, that's what he said, but that wasn't my reason. My reason was because that book touched me. My reason for following, my reason for being here, as many Saturdays and holidays and blah, blah, blah as I have been in the 4 years I've been studying here, is because of that. Now, if my hope...
Because you're feeling what you got.
Yes.
Right.
My hope is that will please God. But that's not why I'm here. My hope is that when I face him face to face, he says, hey, I'm real pleased with the time you put in. But no, that's not why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not why I pray for people. I have no problem with praying for you, and I get a prayer back from that. To me, that's fair. It seems like to me, if all the people, as much as y'all talk about money in church services, is what I've heard here, I would think you would have no problem at all with exchange, fair exchange. I give you my time in prayer, God gives it back to me.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. With what you said about, for me, I have to release space in order for God to be able to give me more. That makes perfect sense. Well,
Right.
where am I going to put it if I don't give it to whoever it looks like
Correct.
they might be able to benefit from it at
They
the
need it.
time? Now, is that because God said? Sometimes. Sometimes it's because
You
I
feel
just
so.
want to do it. And even if I do it because God said, that's as far as I've heard from the Jews I've heard talk, that's my choice. That was the main thing was given to the Jews when they left Egypt. They finally had a choice. Before they left Egypt, they had no choice. They did whatever the guy said from the time they got up in the morning to the time they went to bed. When they went for those 40 years, they had a choice to go. They didn't have to go. They lost 80% of the people because they weren't willing to go. It was only, 20% that went, that
People say
left?
that.
Yeah.
I don't agree.
That wasn't the
But that's
majority.
okay.
That wasn't even a critical mass. So it doesn't have to be, to me, what I hear all of this arguing, and the thing that really distresses me, and it's not enough to make me quit coming, obviously, but the thing that really distresses me is that I wish I had known years ago what I have learned since I've been here. I would have done a much different job as a wife, much different job as a mom, if I had known what I know now. I think it would be wonderful if you guys really were that light. I mean that, because there are people everywhere that their lives would be entirely different if they had even half the time that I've had to listen here. But there's all this fussing. And then, it just, whatever can be the reason to disagree. I hope that changes. I really do. I mean, I know you guys have 1 million books, and they're all written by different people. Not all of them even agree with each other. I get that. But I really hope that at some point